This semester I had the opportunity to dig into, to read about, interview about, and write about pastoral care in rural communities. Uh, I have lived in rural communities my whole life. I have loved rural communities, and very specifically, I felt called to minister to rural communities from when I felt called to ministry 3 years ago. I felt very specifically called to these smaller rural communities that I've been a part of, and so I wanted to examine and look at some of the different challenges that would face these smaller communities, and some of the strategies for addressing those challenges and for meeting the pastoral care and counseling needs of these kinds of communities. And uh, as I was looking at the challenges, there are things like uh, there's just higher rates of alcohol abuse and suicide in smaller communities. Very specifically, like when it comes to alcohol, things like underage drinking and binge drinking are both considerably higher in rural communities than they are in urban areas or suburban areas. Um, but on top of that, there are these challenges of of these small communities can be kind of insulated, kind of isolated, can be cliquish, and can be cut off a little bit, sometimes opposed towards change, or resistant to change at least, um, and resistant to outsiders. That can make it a challenge when you are coming into a rural community, into a small community that you haven't lived in your whole life, as many people who are already a part of that community maybe have. We're going to have graduation here in a few weeks, and some of those kids are going to stick around here, and some of those kids are going to go off to bigger cities. There are very few kids graduating from cities right now that are about to come to this small community. It doesn't usually happen the other way so much, and so you get more generations of people who have been in this same space without a lot of new people coming in, and that is definitely something that you have to be ready for, and know can provide obstacles in providing pastoral care for the pastor in the rural community specifically. There are some additional obstacles of just some high expectations. Um, uh, Anyone in a ministry position uh, can kind of be seen as elevated, and can be lifted up to a really high religious position. It can even get to the point, in talking to one person, can get to the point where you are like the mediator between God and others within the community, which is just a really unhealthy place to be in. And so you got to watch out for that. You have to be careful of that. Uh, Looking at the strategies for caring for communities like this, I was a little bit surprised to find that there really aren't tons and tons of differences, of changes. Good counseling, good pastoral care is good regardless of the situation. And things that came up over and over are things like listening. Doesn't matter what situation you're going into, if it is with someone you're meeting for the first time, somebody who is new to the community, or someone who has lived in the community their whole life and has 4 generations before them who were here, that you're having the 100th conversation with. What you want to go into that conversation and be willing to listen. You want to hear what they have to say about what is going on in their life. You have to be humble enough to listen to them and to hear what they're really saying is going on, and to be able to enter into their story. Another hat that you may have to wear. There are a lot of hats in small town ministry, and one is the hat of connector. Uh, there might be all these different things that could come to you in providing pastoral care, from from the substance abuse to domestic problems to to any other situation that could come up. And sometimes you have to be willing to help everyone in all those situations. You have to be accepting to listen to everybody in all those situations, but you also have to know that you have limits. And when you've reached those limits, to be able to put somebody in touch with another place that could provide more specific care for whatever they're going through at that time. There may be less access to things like a a place for drug abuse, for domestic violence centers, for homeless shelters. But those things do exist in these small towns. It's not that they're not anywhere. You just might have to look a little harder. You might have to look a little farther. And so knowing where all of those resources are, being able to connect all of to connect somebody to specialized care, regardless of the situation, is another important job of providing care in smaller communities. In thinking about all of these challenges, all of these difficulties that you may face, it's also really important to remember that there are blessings of these smaller communities. The same small, close-knit communities that can lead to negative things like the gossip and being cut off and being opposed to newcomers. You have to fight those things, and you have to help these communities to be welcoming and to be open. But that same thing, that same small size and that same close-knit community can be such a blessing when you're a part of that, when you can know everyone who is a part of your church, when you can know everyone, you can literally know everyone who is a part of your community at times, can lead to just some wonderful experiences of community, and can be such a blessing. The final thing is just a reminder from one interview I had with a pastor in a small town, that these moments that we are invited into are sacred moments, and that can be sad things like death and loss of loved ones, struggles like domestic disputes. It can be happy things like the birth of a child or of a wedding, or someone coming to faith in Christ. But no matter what, they are sacred moments, and as a pastor, as someone providing care in those moments, we should remember that and remember what a blessing it is, and that we're allowed to be a part of these blessings, no matter what the size of the community, whether it's a huge community or a small rural community. It is a blessing to provide this kind of care.